If you're on Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, or Zepbound, here's a number worth knowing. Recent 2026 research reviewing GLP-1 users has found meaningfully lower iron levels compared to people on other diabetes medications, and more than 60% of users falling short of their basic calcium and iron needs. This isn't a side effect of the drug itself directly damaging anything. It's simpler and honestly more fixable than that. It's what happens when your plate gets smaller, but what's on it doesn't actually change. Quick note before we go further. I'm not a doctor, and this isn't medical advice. If you're on one of these medications, this is general education, not a personal nutrition plan. Talk to a doctor or dietitian about your specific situation. Here's a genuinely simple question I want you to sit with for the first minute of this video, and I'd actually love to hear your answer in the comments. Think about your last meal. Was it something you chose because it was quick and easy to get down, or because it was actually going to give your body what it needed? No judgment either way. Just notice it, because by the end of this video, that one question might change how you answer it going forward. GLP-1 medications work primarily by suppressing appetite and slowing how quickly your stomach empties. And the effect on how much people eat is substantial. Studies report reductions in daily energy intake of up to 39% compared to before starting the medication. For weight loss specifically, that's the entire point, and it works. But here's the math that gets overlooked. Your body's need for protein, vitamins, and minerals doesn't shrink by that same percentage just because your appetite did. Your cells still need the same raw materials to repair tissue, produce hormones, support your immune system, and maintain muscle. The requirement stays roughly constant, while the amount of food available to supply it drops significantly. That gap is the entire story of this video. And here's the thing, this isn't a rare fringe concern buried in a few case reports. A 2026 review in the journal Clinical Obesity, examining data across multiple studies of GLP-1 users, found this pattern documented clearly enough that researchers are now actively comparing it to a much more established medical scenario, one most people wouldn't expect. What does GLP-1 use have in common with weight loss surgery? More than you'd think. Researchers have started directly comparing the nutritional patterns seen in GLP-1 users to what's long been documented after bariatric surgery, procedures like gastric bypass, which are well known for causing deficiencies in iron, vitamin B12, folate, and calcium. The mechanism is different. Bariatric surgery physically alters absorption in the gut, while GLP-1 medications primarily just dramatically reduce how much you're eating and how varied your diet becomes, especially when nausea or early fullness pushes people toward the same few, safe, tolerable foods. But researchers note the nutritional endpoint looks strikingly similar: reduced protein intake and documented shortfalls in vitamin D, B12, thiamine, calcium, iron, and magnesium. One key difference worth knowing, though: unlike bariatric surgery, which has decades of standardized monitoring protocols from major medical societies, there's currently no equivalent, agreed-upon monitoring guideline for GLP-1 users. This is genuinely newer territory for the medical field. There's also a more specific, mechanistic finding worth mentioning. One pilot study measuring intestinal iron absorption directly found a median 13% reduction after 10 weeks on semaglutide, with nearly 18% of participants showing a drop of more than 30%. That suggests part of this isn't just eating less food. There may be a more direct effect on how efficiently your gut absorbs certain nutrients in the first place, on top of the reduced intake. So if the drug itself might be quietly working against absorption, on top of you simply eating less overall, that raises the obvious question: which nutrients specifically are most at risk, and why does one of them matter so much more than people realize? Protein deserves its own section here, because the consequences of shortfall are the most immediately noticeable. Clinical trial data on semaglutide and tirzepatide shows that while weight loss is predominantly fat loss, a meaningful portion, and in some individual cases a substantial portion, comes from fat-free mass, primarily muscle. Reduced protein intake during treatment is well documented, and if it goes uncorrected, it's directly linked to that unwanted reduction in muscle mass. Here's why that matters beyond just appearance. Muscle is metabolically active tissue. It's part of it keeps your resting metabolism up, supports blood sugar regulation, and keeps you functionally strong as you age. Losing weight that's disproportionately muscle rather than fat isn't the same win as losing weight that's predominantly fat, even if the number on the scale looks identical. The practical target researchers point to for protein during GLP-1 treatment sits around 1.2 to 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight daily, meaningfully higher than the general population recommendation, precisely because you're eating less overall, and your body needs each smaller meal to work harder nutritionally. For a 70-kilogram person, that's roughly 85 to 110 grams a day, which, if your appetite is genuinely suppressed, usually means prioritizing protein first at each meal, before anything else on the plate. Simply because you may not have room left for it later. Protein gets most of the attention in this conversation, understandably, but it's not actually the nutrient showing up most consistently in the deficiency data. That title, somewhat surprisingly, goes to something most people never think to track at all. Across the recent reviews, 3 nutrients show up again and again: iron, vitamin D, and B vitamins, particularly B12. Iron deficiency shows up clearly in the data. One 2026 analysis found GLP-1 users had ferritin levels roughly 26 to 30% lower than comparable patients on a different class of diabetes medication, with the majority of users falling below their estimated daily requirements for both iron and calcium. Iron matters enormously for energy levels and cognitive function. Low iron is a common, often missed explanation for the fatigue some people report while losing weight, one that frequently gets misattributed to the weight loss itself rather than what's actually missing from the diet. B12 and folate deficiencies have also been reported in multiple observational studies, though it's worth being precise here. In controlled clinical trials specifically, vitamin deficiency-related adverse events occurred at rates similar to placebo, suggesting the real-world risk is likely tied more to genuinely poor diet quality during treatment than to something the drug is doing directly to block absorption. That's actually a reassuring distinction. It means this is substantially within your control through what you choose to eat, not an unavoidable side effect of the medication itself. Vitamin D and thiamine round out the list of nutrients researchers flag most consistently, both easy to overlook, both genuinely important for energy, bone health, and nervous system function. So you've got a clear list of what's actually at risk. Here's the part that matters most. None of this requires a complicated supplement stack or an expensive protein powder marketed specifically at people on these medications. It comes down to a handful of genuinely simple, boring principles that just matter more right now than they did before. 1. Protein first, every meal, before anything else. If your stomach fills up fast, make sure the first thing you eat is something protein-dense: eggs, fish, chicken, beans, lentils, dairy, rather than starting with the side dish, or the smaller extra portion and running out of appetite before you get to it. 2. Think in terms of nutrient density, not just calories. With less total food volume available, every bite is doing more work than it used to. A cup of leafy greens with beans genuinely earns its place on a smaller plate in a way that a cup of low-nutrient, ultra-processed filler food doesn't. This isn't about restriction, it's about making a smaller amount of food count for more. 3. Don't skip color. Iron and many of the vitamins we just covered show up reliably in a genuinely varied diet. Different vegetables, different protein sources, a piece of fruit, rather than defaulting to the same 2 or 3 safe foods out of convenience, which is a common, understandable pattern once nausea or early fullness becomes part of the picture. 4. Smaller, more frequent meals can help you actually hit your targets. If a large plate feels overwhelming, splitting your day into 4 or 5 smaller, protein-forward meals or snacks, rather than 3 larger ones, can make it easier to reach an adequate total for the day without needing to eat past comfort at any single sitting. 5. This is genuinely worth a real conversation with a doctor or registered dietitian. Especially for blood work, iron, B12, and vitamin D deficiencies are easy to check with a simple panel, and easy to correct early, long before they'd show up as noticeable symptoms, like fatigue or brain fog. These medications are genuinely effective at what they're designed to do, and the nutritional risk we've covered today isn't a reason to avoid them. It's a reason to eat a little more intentionally while you're on them. Smaller plate, same nutritional job to do. That's really the whole idea. If this changed how you're going to look at your next meal, subscribe. I break down what the science actually says. No fluff, no fear-mongering. And I'm genuinely curious. Scroll down and tell me, was your last meal chosen for convenience, or because it actually had something your body needed?